we put small arrows on parallel lines to show that the lines are in fact parallel. In this square, FO is parallel to RU. So we can put an arrow on FO and an arrow on RU. FR is parallel to side OU because they are opposite sides. So let's put 2 arrows on FR and 2 on OU. Now we don't have the coordinates of R or U, but we know that RU is parallel to FO, and we have the coordinates of both F and O. So now we can use the gradient formula. We can say the gradient of FO is equal to 0 minus 1 over 3 minus 0. 0 minus 1 gives us negative 1 over 3 minus 0, which is simply 3. RU is parallel to FO, which means it has the same gradient. So we know the gradient of RU is also equal to negative 1 over 3. And now we can move on to part B, determine the length of FR. We still don't have the coordinates of R, so we cannot find the distance between F and R, but we are working with a square, and we know it has 4 equal sides. So let's use the distance formula and find the length of FO. Let's say that F is our first point and O is our second. We can say the length of FO is equal to 0 minus 1 in a bracket squared plus 3 minus 0 in a bracket squared, all under a square root. 0 minus 1 gives us negative 1. Negative 1 squared is simply 1 plus 3 minus 0, which is 3 squared, all under a square root. Now we have 1 plus 3 squared, which is 9, under a square root, which means the length of FO is square root 10 units. This is the length of FO, but the square has 4 equal sides, which means that this is also the length of FR. So we can say FR is equal to square root 10. Now we can move on to part C, determine the value of K. K is the y coordinate of point U. Now in parts A and B, we have found gradients and the lengths of all 4 sides. So we can use either formula to find K, but it's easier to use the simplest method, which in this case doesn't involve squares or roots. So let's use the gradient formula to find the value of K. In part A, we found the gradient of line FO is negative 1 over 3. So let's make a note of this over here. To find K, we have to use point O. We have the coordinates of this point. We know that every interior angle of the square is 90 degrees, which means that OU is perpendicular to FO. So if the gradient of FO is negative 1 over 3, this means the gradient of OU must be positive 3 over 1, which is just positive 3. And we can make a note of this over here. Now we can use this information to solve for K. So let's say that O is our first point and U is our second. Our gradient is 3. So we can say 3 is equal to K minus 0 all over 2 minus 3. Now we have 3 is equal to K minus 0, which is simply K, over 2 minus 3, which is negative 1. Now, to get K by itself, let's multiply both sides by negative 1, and we see that negative 3 is equal to K. We now know that K is negative 3, So let's take out the coordinates of u and rewrite them as 2, -3. And now we can move on to part D. Determine the length of OR. Now, OR is a diagonal of the square, but without the coordinates of R, we cannot use the distance formula. But in part B, we found that FO is square root 10 units long. We are working with a square with 4 equal sides. This means that every side has a length of square root 10 units. We also know that side RU is perpendicular to side OU because of the right angle between the sides over here. This shows us that OR is the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle ORU. And we can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of OR. So we can say OR, the hypotenuse, is equal to one side, RU squared, plus the other side, OU squared, all under a square root. We know that RU is root 10 units, so we can say root 10 in a bracket squared, plus side OU, also root 10, say root 10 in a bracket squared, all under a square root. Now, when you have a square and a square root, they will cancel each other out. So the root and the square will cancel, and we have 10 plus the root and the square cancel, and again we have 10 under a square root. 10 plus 10 gives us 20. So we can say 20 under a square root. And this is the length of OR in surd form. Let's do one more example.